Hey everyone, and welcome back. Today we're diving into something that has honestly been blowing up online.
A lot of buzz.
Yeah, a lot of buzz surrounding Elon Musk and some of his actions at the recent Trump inauguration. Yeah. We've got a couple articles here, actually. One from The Guardian and then another from BBC News.
Oh, wow.
Both published just this month in January 2025.
Okay.
And they paint a pretty interesting picture.
I bet they do.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a story that...
Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, no, it's a story that really touches on a lot of sensitive issues, things like politics, of course.
Right.
But also the influence of tech giants and how easy it is these days for, seemingly simple gestures to be blown out of proportion.
Yeah. And that's kind of the big mystery we're going to try to unpack today is this gesture that he made at the inauguration rally.
Okay.
And some people are calling it a fascist salute. Others are defending him. And it's just like everyone has an opinion. And this is all kind of happening against the backdrop of his increasingly public ties to the right wing.
You got to admit, it's a potent mix.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's definitely potent.
Elon Musk is a figure who inspires really passionate reactions on all sides. And this incident has really thrown gasoline on the fire.
Yeah, it has for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's unpack this a little bit.
Okay.
So the scene is Capital One Arena in Washington, D.C. Trump is back in the White House.
Wow.
The crowd is going wild.
Okay.
Musk takes the stage and starts by thanking everyone for making it happen, which seems pretty standard for, a political rally, right?
Yeah, on the surface, yeah. But then after that initial thank you, things get a bit odd.
So here's where it gets interesting. So he places his right hand on his chest and then thrusts his right arm out in front of him with his palm down.
Okay.
And he repeats the gesture a couple times.
Interesting.
Turning to different parts of the crowd as he does this. And he's also saying other things like, my heart goes out to you, and it is thanks to you that the future of civilization is assured.
If you just saw a still image of that gesture, you might not think too much of it.
Yeah.
But when you see the video and hear the accompanying words, it does start to feel a little bit different. Yeah. And that's where the controversy explodes.
Yeah, and The Guardian actually quotes a couple of prominent historians who specialize in fascism.
Oh, wow.
One of them, Ruth Ben-Ghiat, calls it a very belligerent Nazi salute. And then another historian, Claire Aubin, says that people should believe their eyes.
Oh, wow.
So,
And their reactions are understandable.
Yeah.
Given the historical context. I mean, the Sieg Heil salute is so deeply ingrained in our collective memory as a symbol of Nazi Germany and the horrors of the Holocaust. So even the slightest resemblance to that gesture is going to trigger strong reactions.
But not everybody immediately jumped on the Musk is a Nazi bandwagon.
Okay.
The Anti-Defamation League. Okay. The ADL initially said that it looked more like an awkward gesture than a deliberate salute.
That's interesting.
Which is, kind of surprising because the ADL, is known for their work fighting anti-Semitism. Yeah. So you think they would be the first to, condemn anything that even hinted at, Nazi symbolism.
I would think so.
But even they seemed hesitant to label him a fascist based on this one gesture.
So their initial response was almost like they were trying to find a middle ground.
Yeah.
Acknowledge the sensitivity of the issue while also giving him the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah. Yeah. But then that middle ground quickly dissolved when Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, AOC, went on the offensive. Okay. And slammed the ADL for defending what she called a clear Hail Hitler salute.
Oh, wow.
And that's kind of when it really blew up online. Yeah. It was just like everybody had an opinion.
Oh, yeah.
And the debate was incredibly polarized. Yeah. You had people defending him, people condemning him, very little room for nuance in between. Right. And then, of course, Musk himself couldn't resist wading into the fray.
He always does.
Yeah. And he jumped on X, his social media platform. Right. And accused Ocasio-Cortez of having stage 5 Trump derangement syndrome, which is basically, a way of dismissing her criticism as irrational and politically motivated.
Classic Musk,
Right.
Yeah, trolling. I mean, just using humor and provocation to deflect criticism and control the narrative.
Yeah. But in this case, it only served to escalate the controversy. It was like pouring gasoline on a fire. And then to make things even more complicated, you've got figures on the far right who are openly celebrating the whole thing.
Oh, really?
Yeah, like Christopher Pohlhaus, who leads a neo-Nazi group called Blood Tribe.
Wow.
He said that he was going to, enjoy the tears no matter what Musk's intent was. And then Andrew Torba, the founder of Gab, which is a haven for right-wing extremists.
Right.
He hinted that incredible things are happening already.
Oh, wow.
It's like they see this controversy as a win for their movement, regardless of Musk's actual beliefs. You know?
Yeah, it's almost as if he's created like a Rorschach test for political ideology, you know? Everyone sees what they want to see in that gesture.
Right.
And it's fueling divisions even further. Yeah, and that's the really troubling part, isn't it? It's like he inadvertently gave these extremist groups like a gift.
Right.
You know, they can point to this incident and say, see, even Elon Musk is on our side.
Right. So how do we make sense of all this?
Right.
Was he intentionally signaling support for fascism, or was it just a clumsy gesture that's been blown out of proportion?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's impossible to know for sure what was going through his head at that moment.
Right.
But I think we can get some clues by looking at his response to the backlash.
And his broader political leanings.
Yeah, the BBC article kind of dives into his response on X,
Right.
where he wrote, frankly, they need better dirty tricks. The everyone is Hitler attack is so tired.
Again, with that sarcasm and dismissiveness,
Right.
He's basically brushing off the criticism as a desperate attempt to smear him.
Right.
And anyone who supports Trump, but I think there's another layer to this.
What do you mean?
Well, by using that phrase, everyone is Hitler, he's tapping into a very specific right-wing talking point. You know, it's the idea that the left is so obsessed with labeling their opponents as Nazis that the term has lost all meaning.
So he's not just dismissing the criticism, he's also aligning himself with a particular right-wing narrative.
Exactly. And it's a narrative that's been gaining traction in recent years, especially online.
Right.
It's a way of minimizing the threat of far-right extremism.
Okay.
And making it seem like just another political disagreement.
Right. And then there's that whole incident with Andrea Strappa.
Who's one of Musk's confidants, who has ties to the far right in Italy.
Right.
He initially posted the clip of Musk's gesture with a caption about the Roman Empire coming back.
Oh, wow.
And then he quickly deleted it and claimed that Musk, who has autism, was just expressing his feelings.
That's a pretty blatant attempt to spin the narrative.
Yeah.
And deflect criticism.
It almost feels like they're trying to have it both ways, you know?
Yeah.
Like wink and nod at the far right.
Right.
While also maintaining plausible deniability.
And that's a tactic we're seeing more and more these days.
Right.
It's a way of signaling support for extremist views without explicitly endorsing them.
Yeah, it's all very calculated, isn't it?
It certainly is.
Yeah.
And incredibly effective, because even if you call them out on it, they can just accuse you of being too sensitive or reading too much into it.
Right. So we've got this ambiguous gesture, this carefully crafted response, and then we have to layer on top of that his increasingly public association with right-wing figures and ideologies.
Right. Like when he hosted Alice Weidel, the leader of the far-right German party AfD, on X.
Yeah.
And during that conversation, she argued that Hitler was actually a socialist, not conservative or libertarian, and Musk agreed with her.
Wait, what? He actually agreed with that?
He did.
Wow.
And that's where we get into the realm of revisionist history.
Okay, I've heard that term thrown around a lot, but I'm not sure I fully understand it.
Sure.
Can you explain what that means?
So revisionist history is basically an attempt to reinterpret historical events in a way that serves a particular agenda.
Okay.
And in this case, the agenda is to downplay the role of fascism in history and shift the blame to the left.
So by agreeing with her that Hitler was a socialist, he's essentially whitewashing the history of Nazism.
Exactly.
Wow.
He's buying into a narrative that's popular among far-right groups.
Right.
Because it allows them to distance themselves from the atrocities of Nazi Germany while simultaneously demonizing the left.
It's like they're trying to rewrite history to fit their own ideology.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And it's incredibly dangerous because it distorts our understanding of the past and makes it harder to learn from our mistakes.
Right. And it's not just a one-off thing either. The Guardian article also mentions that he's made statements in support of Germany's AfD party and the UK's anti-immigration party Reform UK.
Right.
So it's starting to look like a pattern, right?
It certainly does.
Yeah.
And it's worth noting that these parties, while they may not explicitly call themselves fascist,
Right.
they often espouse views that are very much aligned with far-right ideology.
Like xenophobia, nationalism, and authoritarianism.
Exactly. And that's why his association with these groups is so concerning. He's lending his platform and his credibility to ideologies that are fundamentally opposed to democratic values.
And even world leaders are starting to take notice.
Yeah.
The Guardian article mentions that German Chancellor Olaf Scholz,
okay,
speaking at Davos, defended free speech while also denouncing support for extreme right positions.
Scholz's comments highlight the delicate balance that democracies around the world are facing.
Right.
You know, on the one hand, we want to protect freedom of expression
and
allow for a diversity of viewpoints. But on the other hand, we also have a responsibility to prevent the spread of dangerous ideologies that could undermine our democratic institutions.
So where does that leave us? It seems like he's walking a very fine line here.
He is.
Yeah.
And it's a line that's becoming increasingly blurry.
So what do you think, listener? Are you seeing the same patterns that we are? It's a lot to process, but it's important to be aware of these nuances because they have very real consequences. It can be easy to feel overwhelmed when we talk about, you know, these big issues like rising extremism, influence of tech giants, the spread of misinformation. It's just like, what can any one person do?
That's a very valid feeling, for sure. But I think it's important to remember that we're not powerless. You know, we have more agency than we sometimes realize.
Okay, I hear that. But where do we even begin?
Right.
What concrete steps can we take to kind of push back against these trends?
Well, one of the most powerful things you can do is be mindful of the information you consume.
Okay.
And the sources you trust.
Okay.
So, you know, think critically about what you see online, especially on social media.
So don't just accept everything at face value.
Exactly. Look for credible sources, fact-check information.
Right.
And be wary of sensationalism and clickbait. You know, ask yourself, who's benefiting from spreading this information and what are their motives?
That makes sense. I mean, we're bombarded with so much information these days. It's easy to just get swept up in the outrage cycle without even stopping to think critically about it.
Absolutely. And another powerful tool at your disposal is dialogue.
Okay.
You know, engage with people who hold different viewpoints.
Right.
Even if you find those viewpoints challenging or uncomfortable.
But isn't there a risk there that we're just giving a platform to dangerous ideas?
That's a valid concern.
Yeah.
But I think it's more dangerous to ignore those ideas and pretend they don't exist.
Okay.
We need to understand them if we want to effectively counter them.
So how do we strike that balance? You know, engage in dialogue, but don't be afraid to challenge those ideas.
Exactly. And remember, you don't have to do this alone.
Right.
There are organizations and individuals who are working tirelessly to combat extremism and promote tolerance. So, you know, support them, volunteer your time, donate to their causes.
There's strength in numbers, right?
Yeah.
And it's heartening to know that there are people out there actively fighting for a better future.
Absolutely. And never underestimate the power of your own voice. Speak out against injustice.
Yeah.
Call out hate speech when you see it.
Right.
Hold your elected officials accountable.
So it's about being informed, being engaged, and being brave enough to speak up, even when it's uncomfortable.
Precisely. And remember, change doesn't happen overnight.
Right.
It's a long and often difficult process, but it's a process worth fighting for.
Well said. I think this deep dive has given us a lot to think about.
I agree.
You know, it's a reminder that even seemingly small actions can have big consequences and that we all have a role to play in shaping the world around us.
I agree. And if even a gesture as seemingly innocuous as a wave can be interpreted as a symbol of hate, it's a stark reminder of how fragile our democracy is and how vigilant we need to be in protecting it.
It's a sobering thought, but also a call to action.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for guiding us through this complex and unsettling landscape.
It's been my pleasure. And to you listening, remember that the future isn't predetermined. It's something we create together, one choice, one conversation, one action at a time. So stay informed, stay engaged, and stay hopeful.